What should I assume about workplace technology monitoring? Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. This is a common question, a common thread along a number of different kinds of questions. Let's read the one that I got asked just recently. What is a realistic perspective to take currently in 2022 regarding information technology monitoring in the workplace? In other words, as an employee in an office, I want to feel confident and not fearful regarding my efforts while working, not paranoid or distracted about it. Can you provide any helpful insight or redirect to someone who might be able to? Honestly, you're not going to like my insight. But unfortunately, without more data, honestly, I'm not saying you should be paranoid about your workplace, but I'm also not saying you shouldn't be. Now, to be clear, I have to throw a caveat out front. Some of this verges on legalese, right? We're going to talk about laws and that kind of stuff in a moment. I'm not a lawyer. If you actually have a serious consideration where you're concerned about the laws and rules and regulations, understand that those vary dramatically based on where you are. Not just which country you're in, but like in the United States, which state you're in can have a dramatic impact on what's appropriate, what's valid, and what's allowed. So if you've got a serious consideration, if you've got an actual situation where you're experiencing something like this, the only advice I can give you is to contact a local attorney who's well versed in this kind of stuff. So, the safest bet, you have to assume you're being monitored. You just do. There's no way to know that you're not being monitored, right? There's no way to prove a negative. I'm not saying that you are. Don't get me wrong. It's like I said, I can't say that you're not. So without any additional data, the only thing you can do to actually stay safe is to assume that you're being monitored when you're at work and or when you're using company equipment, even if you're not on premises. What that means is that use your company equipment in the ways that your company expects and allows you to use it. Follow their guidelines, follow their rules. Don't break their rules. It really is that simple. Unfortunately, we just have to assume the worst if we're questioning this at all. So, now that we've assumed the worst and gotten a really depressing version of exactly what's going on, how common is it really? Well, in researching this, I discovered a Wall Street Journal article from earlier this year, actually, and particularly because of the COVID-19 pandemic, they now estimate, through actual research, it's not a number being pulled out of the air, they now estimate that upwards of 60% of employees working for companies with 500 employees or more are potentially being monitored. Monitoring software is being used to track or to potentially track what those employees are doing. That's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, that's close to 2/3 of all employees in large companies are at least at risk of this kind of stuff happening to them. Once again, we just don't know. And it's worse because even if that software is being used, we don't know how it's being used or how closely it's being paid attention to. If all that software is running and monitoring, but nobody's paying any attention, who cares? We don't know. If all that software is running, what are the kinds of things that would trigger action of some sort, right? Do they care about how you're working? Do they care only if you're going outside to random sites that have nothing to do with your work? Are they monitoring your personal email? What is it that they're doing? And what kinds of things are going to get a reaction from them if you do them? We don't know. We can't know. Well, we can, but only in a few circumstances. And the way we can know is to ask. I know that's not a comfortable question to bring to your boss or your HR department or whomever, your IT department. But ultimately, the only way you're going to get close to an answer is by actually asking, am I being monitored? What kind of activities are being monitored? Why? What's being done with this information? What are the rules I'm supposed to follow in order to not get into trouble? What happens when I do something wrong? Hopefully you'll get a straight answer. I have to say hopefully because, yeah, they cannot answer your question, or they can obfuscate the answer, or in the worst case, they could out and out lie. It really does come down to trust. What if you can't trust your employer? Then I come back to you have two options. If you can't trust your employer, you have exactly two options. One, assume the worst. It's the option we started with. It's the worst case scenario. Just assume that everything you're doing is being monitored, and even the smallest step outside of the rules, whatever they might be, would cause a problem. Toe the line. Or option number two, find employment somewhere else. Find an employer that you can trust. The problem, of course, is that not everybody has option number two as an option. Not everybody can just pack up and leave. I realize that it's way more complicated than that. But if you can't trust your employer, you have to act like you can't trust your employer. And that means assuming the worst and towing the line, following the rules, and hoping for the best. Now, I do have to believe that most employers are going to be upfront or honest or clear about what it is they expect from you and what kinds of monitoring they're going to do. But the thing that I keep coming back to is that not all employers are most employers. Not all of them have your best interests at heart. They may not even have their own best interests in heart, right? It's very possible that your employer is doing all sorts of malicious things. We just don't know. I think it's likely that things are good, but we just don't know that they're not bad. And to defend the employers, by the way, for a little bit, that are monitoring their employees, let's face it, not all employees have the best intentions of the company in mind as well, right? We all know of those employees who are breaking the rules, who are slackers, who are whatever, who basically are the reason that this kind of a question happens in the mind of an employer at all. It's a tough situation, but the bottom line is we can't know. And if you can't know, you have to assume the worst. Hopefully that helps. I don't know if that gives you any more confidence or makes you feel a little bit less paranoid. For comments, for updates, for links related to this article and more, visit askleo.com/149583. I'm Leo Notenboom. This is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.